Hello, friends. Welcome to this premiere episode of the Kingsman and the Cyber Guy. I am one of your hosts, retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent Darren Mott, and you're only going to hear me for the first part of this podcast, and I'll explain why before I bring in my other guests and talk about what we're going to talk about. So this particular, I'm going to give you some background here. So if you're listening to this podcast and you are a subscriber already and you're like, what am I listening to? You are probably a subscriber to the Cyber Guy. Or actually, let me replace that. You were a subscriber to the Cyber Smart Morning News Update, which I stopped doing several months ago as I started my own business and didn't have the time for it. Well, since then, I basically been working with a couple guys and we did some stuff. And so this podcast kind of explains what we did. And we called it the Kingsman and the Cyber Guy podcast. And we started doing the live stream in the podcast on July 31st, which if I do this right, it's still today, but it may not be the day you're listening to it. But my audio goofed up. My podcast, my Rodecaster Pro podcasting equipment jacked up the audio so it sounded very robotic. And I figured out like 15 minutes into doing this that I had to reboot the system. So I did that. And so what you're going to hear from this podcast when I'm done talking here is kind of kicking into where the audio kind of was corrected. So in a nutshell, and we'll talk about this more as the podcast comes to fruition with the first actual full what it's doing episode next week. It's got two pieces. Weeks 1 and 3 of every month, the podcast will focus on logistics companies and cybersecurity and physical security risks to them. So if you're not in that field, it may not be of interest, although I will say the stuff we talk about is really important to other entities besides just logistics, where we're kind of focused in that area because of things that have happened in the course of the last several years all over the world, but primarily the UK with M&S being hacked, which is a big supermarket store or supermarket franchise. The Knights of Old, a 100-plus-year-old logistics company in the UK that went out of business because of a ransomware attack. You have other supply chain related things like Move It and things like that. So supply chain affects us all. So we will basically be talking cybersecurity and physical security threats and how to remediate those and stuff like that. The other weeks, 2 and 4, we'll actually talk more professionals in the field, like cyber security professionals, physical security professionals, former FBI agents, former UK operators that may have been with MI5 or MI6 or whoever that my partners over there have access to. And so that's kind of how the podcast will go. And that's kind of what I'm going to really say here. I just wanted to pop in here at the beginning to explain what you're listening to and why it sounds so odd popping into it, because again, remember 14 minutes, the audio sucks. So I cut all that out, and this is the good audio, hopefully. And you'll get the gist of what we're talking about, but this will be a weekly podcast, about a half hour, 35 minutes each time. Again, we want to be here for a good time, not a long time. Again, I stole that from Steve Zabin, one of my podcast guys I listen to, does sports podcasting. But with that, let me introduce you to the Kingsman, who is Michael McQuaid, and and the Cyber Guy, who, as you know, is me. So I hope you enjoy. Feel free to comment, send me emails, darren@thecyberguy.com. Find me on LinkedIn. There's some news there that we release over the course of this podcast. It'll make more sense to what we're doing, and we'll go from there. Other than that, enjoy the rest of your week. Know that knowledge is protection. If you can understand the threats targeting you, you can assess your risk. Proceed wisely. So let's get into the premiere episode of the Kingsman and the Cyber Guy. Oh, okay. There we go. We're still good. You guys still in it? We're still going. Okay. That's pretty awesome. How we doing?
Darren.
Does it sound better?
You literally set up the FBI cyber squad and you're having an IT issue like this. This is incredible.
This is not new cyber. This is audio technology. So let me say this. Does the audio sound better now? Okay. Look. So it does sound, the audio should now sound better. Can you hear me? So now Mike can't hear me. That's pretty awesome. Let me check one.
I can hear you.
Okay. But the audio is better?
Yeah, they're much better. It doesn't sound like I'm flying about in NASA at the minute.
Okay. I now know what the problem is. It only took me 45 minutes to figure it out. It had nothing to do with anything other than this little box right here in front of me that does the audio piece. So for those who's still here, thank you for still being here. I will not probably publish this audio-wise because it's completely jacked all that hell. All right. So, but at least it works better now. Okay. So fantastic. All right. So you know what? Screw all this. So in addition to why we created the podcast, to help logistics and do all this other stuff, there's another reason we did this. And let me so we mentioned earlier that we had a business coach that we both use that helped us with that. And he actually happens to be here. So let's bring in John McCarthy. John, does it sound better now for you too?
Hey, do you know what? Don't blame me for getting it right. I'm normally the guy that breaks stuff, so I'm glad you fixed it before I got on. But yeah, good to see you all.
Yes. So, all right. So the three of us had worked together for at least 7 or 8 months now, and there was an idea. So I'll let John or Mike talk about the idea, where we're at, what this is, beyond just the podcast piece. So John, you kind of started this ball rolling. So explain how you got to where we are now. Like what was it that created where we're going here?
Where the inspiration come from? Well,
go do that.
You being FBI, you guys like the Hollywood, so you were kind of telling me everything that you did, and it was all kind of open book. But Mike wouldn't tell me anything, and I realised who he was working for in the intelligence community. So I knew better than to ask. I knew kind of who he'd been with, and I won't say that on live. But as I got to know you both, and it was just these odd snippets, these odd things you would just drop in conversation. Because I'm not from your world, I don't really understand it or the implications. But it was becoming really apparent that your skill sets, your experiences were off the charts. Just phenomenal. There's a lot of good people out there, techie geeks who do all the cyber and everything else, but you guys operate at a very different level. Not just on the cyber, but what was interesting was the way you worked with threat intelligence, the counter intelligence, and all the other stuff that forms the bigger picture. I don't know what I can say about what you did, Mike, but you were briefing some pretty serious people doing some pretty serious operations. And as I was getting to know both of you, it just became apparent that the skill set, like there must be a commercial value to it. We must be able to utilize this in Civilian Street, because you both did a great job in your departments. I think neither of you could work out who bought this stuff, because there was no sort of direct jobs for you to go to. I remember thinking, you guys, let's just sit down and talk about what we've got, get on the joint call and see where it goes. And it just became really apparent that what you did, there's other cyber teams out there, but the level that you operate is very high, very, very intense. Your experience is insane. And with the additional, because Darren does a lot of cyber, but Mike does a lot more besides. And I think bringing those two together, there's probably nothing else like it in the world outside of governmental organizations. So then, and the thing is, when you're running a business, I've been doing this for 11 years now, here helping people grow. If someone's going to pay you for something, or you want to start a business, you've got to give people something they want, or take away a pain that they've got. And that was the key thing. And we went through, three of us, through various iterations, which kind of drove you guys insane on the marketing front. It's like, what are we going to give, and who are we going to give it to? Why would they want it, or what's the problem that we're solving? And we looked at various different target markets, and we decided not to go for a few because they just kind of wouldn't get it. And then, as Mike was saying earlier, when the cyber security resilience bill came out, we thought logistics and supply. And then my background, I spent 15 years in the British Army, so whilst I don't have the experience that you guys do, I've been around the military even back in the 80s in the Cold War. So I was very kind of attuned and dialed in to security and those raw signals for a time as well. So it made sense what security is and how little of it civilians do. So I was able to kind of join the dots. Building this has been a whole ton of fun, and we've been all really looking forward to the 31st of July, 2025. Because the website's about to go live.
And why is that? So what does that mean?
What does it mean? Well, I think as I said, your skill sets are incredible. We spent a lot of time building up what it is that we do, the offer that we've got, which you might cover later. But the thing is, we can only take on 10 clients in the first year.
Right. So I guess the question, that's not my question. I guess my question, and maybe I missed it because I'm like doing 3 things in the background here while you're talking. Did you say that we started a company? Did that come out, or did I miss that? Did I miss that part?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. So after that, we've got to provide this service. What's it going to be? So we pulled it together. We've gone through various different iterations of the company name. But the company names, we've got registered company's house. So I'll let Mike share that.
Right. So the point, so Mike, go ahead. You know what I'm saying. Why don't you go ahead and say this?
So this isn't like an GCHQ puzzle, trying to pull away with that John's trying to say here. Newsflash, we've started a business between the 3 of us. All 3 of us are co-founders of a business. The business name is called Five Eyes, and that originates from Five Eyes, the intelligence organization. So a bit of a background history on Five Eyes. So Five Eyes originated in 1941, and it was between the UK and the US intelligence community, with the code breakers. So this was during World War II. They worked together. They shared actionable intelligence with each other. And then fast forward to 1946, after World War II, there was the UK-USA agreement, which solidified the UK and the US intelligence community working together. And as time rolled on, you then had the introduction of Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. So including the US and the UK, we make up the Five Eyes. So we thought it was a fitting name for UK and US intelligence community coming together, and that's why we created Five Eyes.
Yes. So essentially, it's a new venture between the three of us. John is the director of operations that talks the technical or the business speak for the technical people who don't talk the business speak, which is me and Mike. Mike is the director of threat intelligence, which includes the physical security piece. And I am the director of cyber operations. So we're all three directors. Do we want to show the roadmap to kind of talk about how we initially talked to this? Yes, no?
Yeah,
maybe?
go for it.
Yes. All right. So the initial idea is we talk to these entities and logistics. Again, the reason we're doing a podcast for logistics companies is because the business is focused on logistics companies, which is not to say if you're a company that's not logistics, we wouldn't talk to you as well, but we're focused primarily on logistics organizations initially under this particular idea and plan. And so before I get to this, there's a blue and a red and a purple section. Give the analogy, Mike. This is your analogy. I don't want to steal it and step on it. So go ahead.
Yeah, it's a brilliant analogy because when I explain this to people who don't understand cybersecurity, and even if you've never watched a game of football, you still understand it. So as long as you understand how a football team sets up, or as what they call it in the US, soccer, then you'll understand how this all works out. So in cybersecurity, you've got effectively three teams. You've got a blue team, a purple team, and a red team. So your blue team is your defensive. So that's roles such as like a SOC analyst, SOC engineer. So those guys are the defensive wall for an organization. Then you've got the purple team, which is your midfielders, for the football analogy. They're the guys, so in the footballing world, they're the guys who are almost like the super glue to the defenders and the attackers. They're the guys who work in the middle. They're the masterminds. They're the ones who make everything come together. So in cybersecurity, it's the exact same. We've got a purple team who work between blue teams and red teams. They're the super glue. They're the guys who work in the middle with both teams. Then you've got the red team, which is the offensive team. So in football, that would be your strikers and your wingers. Your red team in cybersecurity is roles such as like a pen tester. So those are the guys who, in the cybersecurity world, want to test the defence that you've got. So apologies if there's any Manchester United fans out there, right? But to bring it back into football analogy, if your defensive structure in your organisation is set up like Manchester United, who finished, I believe, 18th last year in the Premier League, and you go against Liverpool, who finished first, and you go against their striking force, Liverpool, I'm not saying anything bad about Liverpool, but if that was the threat actor, if they've got the Liverpool forwards and you've got the Manchester United defence, in football they're going to score goals. In the cybersecurity world, they're going to penetrate your company. That's how I explain cybersecurity to people that have never heard of it before in their lives.
Very good. And so now what we're looking at when we talk to companies is essentially this. And this is again, logistics is the main industry we're looking at. But this is really important to really any company, is that you have to start with the defensive piece. If you can't stop the bad stuff from coming in, the bad stuff's going to come in. It doesn't matter what you're doing otherwise. So our essential protection level there is kind of the basic things you need to do to protect yourself. This is going to be a dark web domain exposure report. Basically, we'll say, hey, here's what the bad guys have for you on the dark web. And so that's going to be, emails, passwords. We went to one company and showed them all of their emails and showed them the CEO's password and showed them how vulnerable they potentially were, right? Doesn't mean the bad guys are actively exploiting that information, but the information's there and can be exploited. We'll do a cyber threat intelligence report, and you can read. I don't have to read these to you. You can see what's there. If you have more questions, certainly you can hit me up LinkedIn. I'll explain it to you. Then once, figuring it takes 3 months to kind of get to that point, some companies will want to go and have more offensive oriented capabilities, the red team part. So that includes some actual pen testing of their headquarters facility by physical pen testers, cyber pen testing, how deep can we get in the system? Ideally, not as deep as we would have, because there'll be a vulnerability assessment before this. Tabletop exercises all over the place, because if you don't test your responses to things, you're not going to be able to do much with them. So, and then that additional one-on-one support is somewhat, I look at it as equivalent to a virtual CISO and a virtual CSO all at the same time. And the cost to do both of those things is much more than the cost of what we're doing for the course of a year. And then the purple team, not every company will want the purple piece, but you'll get a whole host of different things. You'll get a SIM solution, some incident response support. We do not do the incident response. We are not taking on your risk as a company. We are helping you mitigate and remediate your risk. That's kind of the plan for that. So, and then if you stick with us for a year, then there is an immersive intelligence experience, which we can't talk about at this point. You'd have to become a client to know exactly what that is. So I'll leave that there. Now, if you're a friend of mine and want to hit me up on DM, I can kind of explain it, but excuse me, that's where that stands. So Mike, John, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah.
Yes. Pen test means nothing to most normal people. So you might want to explain what a physical penetration test is, Mike.
So physical penetration tester is going to be my job. It's not an adult film role. It's not as like it sounds. So a physical penetration tester, which was one of the roles that I did when I was part of the UK intelligence community. So I say fortunate enough. I say I was fortunate enough because it was one of my favourite jobs I've ever done in my life. But it was unfortunate for the people that I was doing it to. So effectively, what a physical penetration tester is, you're tasked to try and penetrate into a site as far as you can physically. So I was responsible once upon a time for physically penetrating military barracks, UK government buildings, and UK airports. So I'd be tasked to see how far I can get through in an airport with maybe something strapped to me, or how far I could get in a military barracks and place something that shouldn't be placed there, etc. So I'm coming out of retirement and get to do it again. Now, it sounds all scary. It sounds like, oh, Mike's just having a wee jolly getting to penetrate people's sites. But it's vitally important, because if I can get onto your site and start putting USB hard drives into towers, or I'm able to put fake bombs under people's desks, then you've got a clear security issue. I should not be able to get onto your site and do those things. So I just want to reiterate that it's not a scary thing. It's just for me to show you that, and this is what will happen as well. When I do it, I'll create an intelligence report to say how exactly I did it, and then we work together to make that not happen again. And just to add value to what Darren said earlier, is to really summarise what we're doing. It's an awareness educational training company, effectively. We are not there to take on security risk for any company. We want to prevent companies companies in the UK, logistics and supply chain companies, from becoming a statistic, because 60% of companies that get cyber attacked in the UK go bust within the opening 6 months. So our job is to try and train people, make people aware, give the correct education that will lower that statistic. I think with mine and Darren's background, we're well equipped to be able to help the UK in that aspect. So that's all the value I've got to add. John, you were about to say something there.
No, I think what's been interesting is, I don't know, the people that are listening in the audience, if they're like me, where they're not into or experienced in cyber security, it's just something that gets left on the bottom of the pile, like health and safety almost used to be. And it's one of those things we'll do one day, and then maybe it's too late one day. But I think the thing is, maybe it's because I'm more aware now, but I think we're seeing Co-op, we're seeing Marks and Spencer's, Tesco's got I don't think it was cyber, but there's so much stuff going on, it's scary. And I think if everything's happening in the world now, it's not as safe as it used to be. We've got Russia, we've got China, we've got Iran, North Korea, and I think now I'm very aware and talking to you two, I'm listening to a lot more interesting news reports that are out there, and it's almost like the wars now are going to be fought in cyber, not so much boots on the ground. And I think, and that's why infrastructure is so important. And yet, and as businesses, that's my background, is looking after businesses. It's our whole future. Maybe it's a family business that's been around for the last 100 years. Maybe it's our pensions, how we pay for our growing up our children, and it could be gone within 6 months just because one of the bad guys gets in. It's far more serious now than it has been for a very long time, I think. I think we need to kind of press that home.
So, John, it'd be actually interesting to have this conversation, actually, because when you first met me and Darren, you really never had any idea about this domain at all, not really much about the digital world. And then as you started working with us, you started to see a lot more, and you were listening to the educational content me and Darren was giving. So it'd be probably good for the listeners and the viewers who have no appreciation for cybersecurity. Maybe there's a logistics company that's listening right now. They've barely know anything about cybersecurity at all. Can you explain that journey of how that happened for you? Like, what was like the penny drop moment? How long did it take you to fully grasp what me and Darren were talking about?
Well, I think because I spent 15 years in the military and I joined in the 80s when the Cold War was still on. So I was in Germany in 87, 88, and we were getting briefed on, the Berlin Wall and their actors that were over here and vice versa. So I was very aware of it as a young soldier then. And then, you were getting into the barracks, and I was one of the guys that should have been stopping you. So it's just something you learn to be around. But I think this is a very safe country, and we go to work, we just come home again, we don't think much about it. I think so many of us, we're kind of so safe in this country, we don't open our eyes. And I think keep thinking like health and safety came out so many decades ago. People didn't take it seriously, but health and safety is a really important thing because people get injured, they can't come to work, people get killed, and then the owners then are going to jail. And I think people are starting to see not it's just something has to happen or they should happen, a tick box exercise. They're seen as a good way of looking after the people, which are generally their biggest resource, and also it's going to help them get better clients or retain clients if they're looking after the staff and the clients better. And I think where we are now with cyber, it's coming that way, but coming out at a real pace. The threat up there is insane. So it wasn't really so much of a penny drop moment, but I think I've had that kind of awareness for 40 something years. But I think what was interesting talking to your background, Mike, is the fact when you start talking about what Russia are doing and what China are doing, and it's the fact that we think they bomb our military bases. They just take down the railway. They just switch off electricity. They just shut down our mobile phone networks. They stop trucks moving, and the country comes to a standstill. It's really frightening what can happen, and how much your former communities are doing to protect us. But they can't, as you said, they can't protect everybody.
See, Darren might not know this because he's in the US, right? But in the UK, if we get an inch of snow, the country comes to a standstill. You know what I mean? So it's
correct. So I grew up in upstate New York. Trust me, we had no problem with snow.
Well, see, in the UK, I would walk. If we get an inch of snow, people are off work.
Yeah. When I was growing up, I had to walk uphill both ways, barefoot in snow to get to school. So you guys complain. You guys complain about 26 degrees Celsius temperature. That's what the temperature is when I wake up. Come on, man. I'm in Alabama now. On both ends of this thing. Goodness, I can't get it. And the other problem is now I'm starting to spell defense with a C, program with two M's and an E. My English is getting bad.
We'll get talking about the weather every call.
Right, I will say. So let me say that not every podcast is going to be us talking about this business. This was just the purpose of this episode was to kind of release that in. But like the next episode will be actually more about the stuff that I've done in podcasts for 5 years, talking about here's the problem, here's how to fix it, here's what it means, tactical solutions like this, and it leads into obviously the space that we're looking to move into, but. Even those things are important to businesses outside of logistics, meaning even though we're focused on logistics, if you're a company that is not logistics, you're like, that sounds interesting, I'd like to learn more. We'll talk to you too, don't get me wrong, but we're not coming straight at you right away. And this is not going to be a UK business forever, correct?
No, John, you can take the honor for that one.
Yeah, I think, well, initially, Mike, just likes being in the warm. He's sort of trying to get his skin to go from blue to white. Maybe he can get a sentiment one day. Yeah, I think Americans, and I'm working with some Americans now, just by the nature of my current work. I'm finding the American, do you know, it's like I've always known Americans because they're always on TV, but I've got to know them properly, and they're a really cool bunch to work with. And they make decisions fast, and they move, and they think big, and they go, which the Brits don't tend to do it so well. So I think it would be a lot of fun running, because you're in America now, and you've got so many contacts out there. It'd be a lot of fun working this in the UK and the USA as well. The challenge is, or maybe it's not a challenge, the cybersecurity bill that we've got here opens up such a huge market for us, so many people that actually need our help. We're going to have to, if we do grow, well, not if, it's when we grow, we're going to have UK teams and US teams as well. So I can see this being a really fun business with good people.
Right. And one other thing I will say, like, we have a lot of services we offer. We don't do them all. A lot of those are partnerships with other companies. So if you happen to see that chart and you have a company, especially if you're a startup company, we want to work with startups that are doing new and unique things to build security in the space. If you do incident response, so reach out to us, because we're looking to create those partnerships to team up with areas that we may not necessarily work towards, but have a partner that can do those kind of things. We've already made some of those. So if you're one of those companies, feel free to hit us up. I mean, if you want, try not to pitch slap us on LinkedIn. That'd be fantastic, as we will try not to do to others. But yeah, I mean, I get, John loves it though. Pitch slap John all day long. That's his thing. You get to.
Yeah, but no, I mean it's a good point, isn't it? Because it's one of those misconceptions that when people think of cybersecurity, they think of what we know as like a SIEM. It's like it's a tool, it's a software. That's what people think cybersecurity is. It's like, just protect my computer. But those who are part of the cybersecurity community know that cybersecurity is so much more broader than that. I mean, it's like 30 plus different jobs you can do in cybersecurity. So there's such a broad thing that, as impressive as Darren's background's been in the FBI, he cannot possibly do every single job in cybersecurity. And this is why we would like to partner with other companies that can do the things that we can't do. And it also works vice versa. We can do things that other companies can't do as well. So you've got that partnership merge with other companies.
Right. So like I like to say on most of my podcasts, we're here for a good time, not a long time. So we're at almost 40 minutes, even though minus the 15 minutes of really bad audio, thanks to me. So I'm going to have to go through and edit all of these things and remove some of that stuff. So if you've hung out this long, if you've made it this long, and not many have, clearly, but if you see this at another time and have made it to this part of the podcast, we want to offer you something free. And that something free is...
Oh, I love it. I want a signature with that.
Yeah. Oh, no, it'll be the PDF. Yeah, a PDF. Free PDF of Get Cyber Smart, a user-friendly guide to protecting yourself, your family, and your business online. So if you'd like a free copy, I'll send you the PDF. Probably the people listening now already have a hard copy because they know me, and so I already sent it to them. But if you made it this long, you've listened, you're interested, I'll send you the PDF. And, it's designed for all sorts of things. To cyber basics, basically, is really all it is. I sent it to John, but he couldn't read it, so he said, "No, I'm not."
I'll just do pictures. Hey,
right.
Dan, I don't know if you mentioned yet, like, your future plans for the podcast, or some of the guests to be bringing on. Because we haven't spoken about people that we're talking to. Probably not even allowed to talk about yet.
Right. So at the beginning, I think we talked about it, but you couldn't hear it because the audio was so bad. But so week 1 and 3 is the logistics focus. So it's going to focus on information news specific to that industry. Week 2 and 4 is more free-flowing with people, just cyber influencers, physical security people, not cyber influencers, but people who are cyber security professionals, people who are physical security professionals, other retired FBI agents, other retired UK military intelligence folks, no lawyers, though we probably won't talk to any of them because they're no fun. But that's kind of the idea. And if you want to be a guest on here, and we will probably try to live stream them, if we can, because I'm always so good at this. That's been such a good time. Reach out to me if you're interested in being on. If you have a particular topic, if you have a product you want to talk about, I'm certainly happy to talk about. If you have something new in AI, machine learning, whatever the buzzword is, come on there. I'll leverage some of my contacts to bring them on. And I'll probably still do a couple of my other podcasts. The Cyber Guy podcast will continue periodically when we have stuff that's outside of the scope of this. Tactical Cyber podcast will probably also continue at some point once I can get with Paul, my other guest host, and get us organized to bring that back in. But so that's kind of the plan for the podcast. Now, it will always be Thursday. probably, but I can tell you next week it won't be. I'm going on vacation, but I'll be back on Friday, so we'll probably do it next Friday. And so from a guest perspective, I'm trying to get someone from the Knights of Old to come talk about what exactly happened to them. So if anybody knows anybody from the Knights of Old, hit me up. I'm happy to reach out and chat with them. But so there's that. So Mike, John, any last words you'd like to throw out, words of wisdom as we move forward?
I'll go with mine. I'm just absolutely buzzing to come back out of retirement again and get back into the game and doing all this again. I remember when me and John had the conversation back in January, and for a long time I've had that sort of fire in my belly that I've wanted to get back into it, and I just don't know how to get back into it. I didn't want to, rejoin the military or rejoin different organisations. I didn't want to do that. And then John, with his commercial business mind, went, well, you've got this skill set, Dan's got this skill set, let's merge it together and let's have some fun when we're doing it. So I'm just buzzing to get back into the game again.
John?
Yeah, so that's one of those misconceptions. Dan has it with FBI films and TV series, badass guys jumping out of planes and cars blowing up and stuff. And I don't imagine, that doesn't happen, but every film and episode's like that, isn't it? So in the UK, you've got James Bond, you've got 007, you've got Aston Martins, you've got Shaken Not Stirred. My career, I had a Skoda and a £30 daily food allowance. So if you're thinking of going into that as a career, don't think you're getting an Aston Martin, Russian chicks and Shaken Not Stirred. You got a Skoda and a £30 daily food allowance. So,
Is there a picture? Is there a picture anywhere we can share?
What, of me and a Skoda?
Yeah. You still have that scooter, don't you? That's probably still how you get around.
Not a Skoda, the car manufacturer, Skoda. Not a scooter.
Oh, see, what I'm hearing is scooter. It's like that thing we talked about with aspirin yesterday, whatever the hell the aspirin thing was. So. Yeah, paracetamol. If any of my friends who are English have any idea, or U.S., but I'm sorry, not English, but are in the U.S. and know what paracetamol is, that'd be fantastic to know. Please let me know if you know what that is. I had to look it up 3 times. Couldn't spell it. Anyway. Correct. Yep. All right. So one thing, I made one other error first. So I'm going to, sorry, another good audio. So I'm basically bringing up the we're getting out of here music. So for Michael McQuaid, John McCarthy, Darren Mott here, thank you so much for taking the time to if you made it through the end. If you did, I'm going to go through and edit a lot of that crap out that doesn't sound good, so it's going to look funky. We'll get it together by next week. Thanks for listening. Check out the Five Eyes LinkedIn page, Five Eyes LTD. You can go to my profile, Mike's profile, John's profile, and link you to that. If you want to get more information there, hit us up. If you have thoughts, questions, if you do a service and want us to know, give us a call, because it's important to understand the threats targeting you so you can assess your risk, proceed wisely. Gentlemen, thanks for putting up with all of this. It'll be better next time. I truly do promise. And for everybody else, thanks for listening. We'll talk again soon.
So what happens when you bring the US in to do stuff?